One. Hey, it's your man DJ Seko doing the fly guy thing. I have my partner in crime, the queen of questions, Miss Blair Durham. Salute that. How you doing, Blair?
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Good. And look, we have Greg Palast on the line again. How you doing, Greg?
Glad to be with you.
Good, good, good. So to everyone who's watching this great podcast, Greg is taking on the mission of sharing with Americans some ways that our government are using to prevent us from being part of the government, being involved in our livelihood, in our lives. In particular, this program called Crosscheck. So what we want to do is start off with Greg, you telling us a little bit about your background, how you got involved in making films and things of that nature. Then let's move into the film that you have out now, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. And then we're going to go deep into Crosscheck, all right? So
okay, that's quite a bit. Well, why are you listening to Greg Palast? The answer is I'm an investigative reporter for Rolling Stone magazine and for BBC television. And for Rolling Stone and by the way, the Al Jazeera network, I was able to investigate the ways that the Trumpistas, that Trump and his henchmen are using to stop Black folk and other people of color from voting. In fact, Trump didn't win the election. He didn't win the popular vote. That everyone agrees, but he didn't win the Electoral College. Not if you count the votes of African Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans who were barred from voting, whose votes didn't count. I investigated this for Rolling Stone. I put it in a film, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. I will be in Virginia this Saturday. There'll be a showing of that film, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, in Hampton Bays. And I will be at the showing at the First African Baptist Church in Richmond at noon on Saturday, Saturday the 9th, for showing the film and a discussion about how we can beat up those who would take away the votes of Black folk. In particular, here's the weird thing. There's a program. There's this nasty program, a real Jim Crow program. You know, Jim Crow has gone into cyberspace now, and the current program is called, we all know about the problems of ridiculous ID requirements to prove you are who you are, proof of citizenship, all this nonsense.
Right.
Those things take a bite out of student votes and voters of color, poor people. But there's this new system called Crosscheck. And it's run in 28 states, almost all of them Republican. But here's the weird thing. We have the governor of Virginia, in the state of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, who claims to be a Democrat, is actually one of the only Democratic governors who's keeping his state inside this Jim Crow system of removing voters called Crosscheck. Now, just very simply, what is Crosscheck? Crosscheck, remember Donald Trump saying there are millions of people voting many, many times. He's claiming that people vote in the same election twice.
Right.
In two different states. So a guy named James Brown in Georgia, and this is a real case, voted. A guy named James Brown in Virginia voted, and they say, well, obviously that's the same person voting twice. That's their game. They're taking common names, matching them across state lines, and stopping people from voting. You don't even, by the way, if you showed up at the voting polls in 2016 and your name was not on the voter rolls, you go, well, wait, I've always voted here. What's going on? Well, the answer, my friend, is you've been cross-checked.
Wow.
So that's the whole deal. This is how Donald Trump swiped the states of Michigan, of Ohio, of Arizona, and that they also took congressional seats in Georgia and elsewhere by this racist system called Crosscheck. It is absolutely weird that you have a Democratic governor with a Democratic elections board in Virginia that's still playing this Crosscheck game. But you can see the whole thing in my film because not only do I do investigative reporting, I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I have a film, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, Tale of Billionaires and Ballot Bandits, and it has, it's not your typical documentary. It's kind of a nonfiction movie, and it has a lot of people that stepping in on to help me out. Ice-T and Richard Belzer from Law and Order helped me out on my investigation. I also have Willie Nelson, Rosario Dawson, Shailene Woodley.
I have to say,
a lot of good people, and a lot of it, by the way, even though it's about stealing votes, a lot of it is it's a detective story, and most of the caper is pretty fun and funny. A lot of cartoons.
Right.
It ends pretty tough, but it's entertainment, but it's entertainment that's going to fill your brain with stuff and not junk.
It was really valuable. I enjoyed the film. I watched it twice. Thank you for allowing me to preview it before we show it here in Hampton Roads. I do thank you for putting Rosario Dawson in there. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Okay. All right. Okay, but how did you get involved in making documentaries? You know, you did investigative reporting in Britain, right?
In Britain, right. So I was an investigative reporter for The Guardian, which is really the #1 paper in the English language for investigative reporting, not the New York Times or any of these other goofy American papers, but the Guardian in Britain, and also BBC Television, doing reports for their nightly news program, Newsnight. And I wanted to bring the stories back to the United States, so I made a couple documentaries, one for BBC about how George Bush stole the election back in 2000, called Bush Family Fortunes.
Hold up. 2000, Bush stole the election?
Bush stole the election. Now, 2 Bushes, actually. It took 2 Bushes to steal the election. In 2000, in Florida, remember, if you will remember, George W. Bush was elected president of the United States by merely 537 votes in the state of Florida. His brother was governor, and Americans said, oh, that's not so bad. Oh, yeah, it's his brother was governor and in charge of counting the votes with Catherine Harris, who was the henchlet of, she was Secretary of State. And what she did was, I discovered that they had removed tens of thousands of black folk from the voter rolls, calling them felons, marking them as ex-cons who don't have the right to vote in Florida. Over 56,000 people were tagged as ex-cons. You'll see it, actually, we have a cartoon about it in the film, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. We have a cartoon that lays it all out, but it's the real investigative report that I did for The Guardian. And I got a hold of the list of these so-called felons. And these so-called felons included people like Willie Steen, who was a Gulf War veteran, a young African-American, and they said he couldn't vote because he was convicted of a crime because a guy named Willie Osteen, who was white, by the way, in Ohio, was convicted of a crime. So they took away Willie Steen's vote. Now, so none, exactly 0, 0, 0 of the black folk on that roll, on the voter rolls that were knocked off. And that made George Bush president. If you take away 56,000 black people from the voter rolls, of course, Bush would have won. It's just 537 votes. So we know how they did it, through these racist tactics, and it's back with this thing called Crosscheck. So I started with that investigation, making a film of that. I came to the United States. I could not get on Caucasian television in America, like, you know, it's weirdly, you know, because I'm on the nightly news in Britain and in other places around the world. And so I come back to my home country, and for example, I'm on MSNBC, but you'll see me on Joy Reid's show, an African-American woman. And, but, you know, what about the pale-face hosts? So because I can't get on US TV, I've decided to go around US TV and make a film of my own, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, with all these good actors. And it's a real story. I mean, about my investigation for Rolling Stone on how they were going to steal the 2016 election. I predicted it, how they were going to do it for Trump by removing voters of color. About 1.1 million voters of color are removed. And I discovered this before the election. In fact, the original version of the film was released in September, and before the election, saying, here's how Trump's going to steal it. No one paid attention. Everyone bought their party dress for the Hillary inaugural. But when Trump did steal it, when he won it, suddenly my film became very important to people. I've updated it. What you'll see in Richmond, Virginia, and what you'll see in Hampton Roads will be the updated post-election film, which goes into also how they stole it. If you can't get there, and I want you to be there, because we're not only going to show the film, we're going to have a discussion about what we do about it and get your ideas. But very, very important, we are going to, you'll have the new version of the film. If you can't make it, go to gregpalast.com, because next week we're going to have the updated edition on the website for you to download or get a DVD.
Okay. So I'm looking at the trailer, and I see a picture of you pointing at a list of names, and I see the name Jackson and a lot of variations and different people: Vaughn Jackson, Vernicia Sandra Jackson, Veronica Elaine Jackson, Victory Lee Jackson, and I see FL, so I'm assuming that's Florida. But I'm seeing Blah, BLA, then I see WHA, WHI, then I see ASP. Okay, so I understand Florida. I understand the names. What does BLA, WHY, and ASP mean?
Well, this is very interesting because this is Catherine Harris and Jeb Bush's secret list of the so-called Florida felons. So they're all from Florida, and you will note that these are names like Jackson, like William Jackson. There's several William Jacksons on the list.
Right.
They simply took. They found people like William Jackson in another state who was convicted of a crime, and they said, okay, well, William Jackson in Florida is going to lose his vote because he's not allowed to vote. And whose votes were they taking? Well, it's black folk. Now, I didn't know that. I kept looking like you. I was looking at that list, BLA, and I kid you not, when I first saw that, I thought, blah, 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 blah. What's blah, blah, blah? And then I realized, of course, when I saw WHI, black and white. ASP, by the way, is Asian Pacific Islander. And they have a lot of Asians that they don't like. Asians vote as if they've turned black. They vote out 75% Democratic. So they don't want the Asian voters either. That includes a lot of Muslims. That includes Koreans and others who really are very unhappy with the Republican Party, especially over immigration issues, which are bigger in that community almost than the Hispanic community. So what you saw was that's the secret list I got. I got also the secret cross-check list from the state of Virginia. The state of Virginia is using this Jim Crow process. They take names like, in the film we have Maria Inez Hernandez. Maria Hernandez of Virginia is supposed to be the same voter as Maria Isabel Hernandez, two different middle names. Maria Isabel Hernandez of Georgia. And these are real names of people that they say are voting twice, even though it's different middle names. And of course, Maria Hernandez, you could say, well, that's a common name. Not for a Republican, it ain't a common name. And so that's why they're knocking these people off. Terry McAuliffe, the so-called Democratic governor, his elections board chief, a so-called Democrat. It's true, they inherited this crappy Jim Crow racist system from their Republican predecessor. But so what? Time to get off the Jim Crow bandwagon. The state of New York, the state of Oregon, the state of Washington, even the state of Florida, by the way, which is Republican, they all got off this Jim Crow bandwagon, leaving only 25 Republican states, 3 Democratic states. Why are these Democratic states on there? I know that Illinois will be leaving soon because Jesse Jackson has put down the hammer on the Illinois Secretary of State to get the heck out of Crosscheck. So basically it's a Republican purge program. Is it racist? Well, yeah, in its effect. The idea, of course, it's not that they don't like the color of people's skin, that they don't like black people. They don't like people who vote blue Democratic. I'm not a Democrat, but this is straight racism, and it's it's time to put an end to it. That's why I'm coming to Virginia for September 9th for the showings.
Okay. Wow. So this really just kind of blows me away. I'm so glad you put this film out. So if I have the last name Williams, Ruiz, Gonzalez, Rodriguez, Kim, Johnson,
you're going to lose your vote. Excuse me. What's happening, in fact, I went through, we had experts go through the list in Virginia. And in the Virginia list, 1 in 9 African Americans in Virginia, African American voters in Virginia, are on this cross-check list. 1 in 9. So if you show up at the polls and they say your name's no longer on the list or you're marked inactive, they don't tell you you've been cross-checked. If you're cross-checked. So by the way, one thing I'd like everyone to do who's watching this, please, if you're in Virginia or Georgia or any of these states, go online and see that you're still registered. One weird, simple way to defeat cross-check is re-register. They never take you off twice. They just re-register. That's the big thing. If you re-register, they won't remove you a second time.
Wow. Wow.
So I've got like 3 questions now.
Question
First,
question.
I want to thank you for the film as well, and thank you for reviewing kind of the history of voter suppression. I think it's important to note that.
By the way, did you like the film?
What's that?
Did you like the film?
Oh, I really enjoyed it. I watched it twice as well. A lot of information. I think anytime we can take a closer look at how institutionalized racism is happening, that's always going to add value, particularly with respect to the kind of work that I do. So yes. So yeah, regarding the history piece, I thought that was critical. I mean, you went all the way back in terms of pointing out how it is that votes have been suppressed. And so, because on one hand, it's easy to say, hey, this is a Trump issue, this is a Republican issue, but this is just, you know what I mean? It's bigger than both of those two entities, I think. So in terms of, by way of a question, thinking about both sides of voter suppression, what happens before you show up to vote, right? When you get the little postcard in the mail that you'd probably not do anything about, not even notice, whatever, right? And then what happens after your vote is cast. So would it be the case for any of these votes that were purged or suppressed that the voter actually did vote, and then after the fact,
they're removed?
The votes were removed, like in the case, say, of George Bush. There were votes that were actually there, and then they were just purged, and it didn't have anything to do with, like the people that you went to in the film. These are people that are on the list because they're cross-checked, and that's one way it can happen. But
well, yes. Well, there's 2 ways you lose your vote after you vote, and you think you voted. For example, in the case of crosscheck, if before they removed you, they sent you an absentee ballot, you mail it in, then they find you on the crosscheck list. They'll challenge your ballot. Your vote doesn't count, and you don't know it. And the other thing is, I have in the film, in fact, go to gregpalast.com or my Facebook page at Greg Palast Investigates. There's another way. There's something called spoilage in America. And I put this in the film too, again in a cartoon.
Yes.
Even though it's grim, I want you to have fun watching this stuff. And it's called spoilage. There are about 2.7 million votes, almost 3 million votes in America that are simply not counted, even after they're cast. Why? Because they claim, the machines couldn't read them, or your signature, something was wrong. They rejected your absentee ballot because you didn't use the same signature. You forgot to add your middle initial when you registered with your middle initial. All kinds of gimmicks. Now, here's the trick. So, for example, in Michigan, Trump supposedly won Michigan. You'll see this in the film. Trump supposedly won Michigan by 10,000 votes. However, 75,355 votes in Michigan were never counted. They were cast, not counted. Almost all of them in Detroit and Flint, African-American cities, where 87 voting machines broke down and simply couldn't count the ballots. They literally couldn't count the ballots because the machines broke. Now, if you had those 87 machines working and you had those 75,000 ballots never counted, the human eye can read those things, even if the machine breaks down. And there was an attempt to have a recount or a count of those votes, and it was blocked by Donald Trump's lawyers. Donald Trump didn't win Michigan. If you counted those votes that black people cast in Detroit and Flint, he didn't win Michigan. He didn't win Ohio. He didn't win Arizona because they removed so many people before, often after they cast their ballots. We have, and a lot of people are given what are called provisional ballots. And by the way, until recently, only black people tended to get these. And here's by the way, very, very important statistic, which you will find in the book and in the film. And by the way, there's a book that goes with it called The Best Democracy, Money Could Buy. In the film, we mentioned something called provisional ballots, which are what I call placebo ballots, because they make you think you voted when you haven't. So your name's on the list. They say, don't worry, just fill out this provisional ballot. The chances are it won't be counted. So here's here's the cruel story. According to the U.S. Civil Rights Commission, that investigated some of my findings, they concluded that the chance of your losing your vote to spoilage, that is, you cast your vote and it doesn't get counted, is 900% higher if you're black than if you're white. Let me repeat that. If you're black, chance your vote won't get counted after you've cast it is 900% higher than if you're white. That's another thing that helped elect George Bush in 2000 and Donald Trump in 2016. So the games don't change, you just get more sophisticated at them, and that's why I had to make a film to warn everyone.
Well, one of the things that really kind of captured me was the quality of your film. Your film quality and the documentary work was beautiful. It was captivating. It was fun. It had Rosario Dawson in there. It was excellent.
You really have a thing for Rosario, don't you?
We all do this. Who funded this? I mean, who? Because that makes me wonder if somebody's behind you. I mean, how did you make the money? How did you raise the money?
I wish someone were behind me, but what I have is one thing I'm very lucky about is that I have tens of thousands of people behind me. I have a foundation. This is a not-for-profit venture. I didn't get paid to do this. What we have is a foundation, the Palast Investigative Fund. And if you're watching, you want to donate, go right ahead. Go to gregpalast.com, and it says donate. It's a tax-deductible donation. We have tens of thousands of people, tens of thousands, who have given us $5 and $10, and if you give it the $50, I'll sign a DVD disc and say thank you, Johnny, for supporting us. And that's how we do it. We do it by books and films that people donate for. I sign them. They make monthly donations, or even some guy takes $2 every month out of his Social Security check and sends it to us. So I'm really very moved. It's usually, by the way, low-income people, for the most part, funded this film with a few bucks each.
Wow. Blair, I know we got a chance to talk a lot after watching the film. So, you know, she and I had a lot of discussion. I mean, we talked for a long time, and I know she and her husband talked for a long time. My wife and I talked for a long time. What do we do? What do we do if we find out we've been cross-checked?
Well, first of all, there's a couple things you can do. And this is, by the way, one of the reasons we're having the meeting. One is we have to politically organize to end this system. Virginia should not be in cross-check, for God's sake. What is Terry McAuliffe, the governor, doing this Jim Crow program? So I'll ignore that. What are they doing in that? The second, you can protect yourself. So you can protect yourself simply by re-registering. And so you can check your registration online and see if you're
Greg,
still
can I interject there? That was one of the questions that I had about simply re-registering. So if the cross-check has happened because I'm a felon, is it really just a matter, is it as simple as re-registering, or at that point, do I have to go through a process?
You're accounted for as a voter is trying to vote in 2 different states. For some reason, their system doesn't seem to capture people twice. If you're listed as a felon, look out. Our guy, Willie Steen, young African-American, Gulf War veteran, terrific guy, never had a traffic ticket. When I was with him filming this for here and for BBC television.
That's hard to do in Virginia.
He lost his vote twice. He lost his vote twice. First in 2000. And he actually got a letter of apology from the state of Florida, from Catherine Harris, saying, we're sorry we wrongly took away your vote. Ha ha, Bush still got elected. And in 2004, he went back and they took his name off again. So if you're listed as a felon, you've got a problem. And that's true. And in Virginia, and one good thing that Governor McAuliffe has done is he did say that he would pardon as many people as possible just so that they can vote once they've served their time. It's that's another old Jim Crow trick. Even the idea of felon disenfranchisement, that was created by the Ku Klux Klan. I don't make that up. They actually the Klan wrote that law for Virginia, and they wrote it for these Georgia and Florida, and that stuff has got to end. But even more important, they say there's a big argument in Virginia about whether people who are on the felon list should be allowed to vote. Well, the problem is half those people on the list were never convicted of any crime anyway. They just have African American names. That's all.
So at that point, it's bigger than just being able to go online and re-register, I think is what.
Yeah, but if you're cross-check that, but I always tell people re-register, look online, make sure that you've got your that you have a registration, and then of course there's a lot of tricks that they can use. The other thing is try to vote early if you can. Go in person and register. If you mail in your vote, that's also a danger. If it's the only way you can do it, by the way, do it.
You're far more likely to be spoiled
to voting station, right? But try to vote early when you can, so that if there's a problem, if they say your name isn't on the list, then you can go back and check it out. But even voting for African Americans and Hispanics is difficult in America. In my film, you'll see a shot in Dayton where black people at the black precinct, black voting station, waited 5 hours. This is Dayton, Ohio. Waited 5 hours in line to vote. I went down the road to a white suburb of Toledo and to see how long the lines were there. In the white suburb, there were no lines. They had so many poll workers that they actually had more. The poll workers were in line waiting for voters. And there you got tea and coffee. You got tea, coffee, and cookies when you show up to vote. In the black precinct where you waited 5 hours, the line snaked through the parking lot. This is November in Ohio. It's freezing cold. People are standing 5 hours in this freezing parking lot, this half-mile long line. It was insane. But that's welcome to black voting in America. But that's what you got to do. I'm sorry, that's not easy. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, Seko and I were sharing those kinds of stories. I know in 2008, voting for President Obama, I waited 3 hours in the rain, in the cold, in the dark, because we got there that early, knowing that it was crazy. So another question I have is, so if each state can kind of sign on to be a part of this cross-check system, yes, that means that these lists are not developed at the state level. They're developed at a corporate level or a national level. Is that?
That's a very important. You've got a very good answer. Asked a very good question. These lists, this hit list of so-called double voters, created by a character named Chris Kobach of Kansas. If you can't remember that,
so Kobach created the list for the entire U.S.
Right. Well, what he does is he takes the lists. So, for example, the state of Virginia sent this Chris Kobach of Kansas the entire voter file of the state of Virginia, including the Social Security information, birth date information, etc. And Chris Kobach then mushed together these lists from the different states, from Virginia, from Georgia, and others. Now, remember, almost every Democratic state except for Virginia refused to give Kobach their list. So those are left out. But Virginia and other Republican states put together the list. Kobach does it on this goofy computer in Alabama, and all they do is match the first name and the last name. So if your name is Joe Brown, good luck.
So let me
getting your vote counted in Virginia. If your name is Jose Hernandez, good luck getting your vote counted in Virginia. And
hold on. Are you saying this was voluntary? The states had the choice?
Yep. And you want to hear a good one? This is one question for your governor. Chris Kobach became Donald Trump's voting chief. That is, he's head of Donald Trump's Elections Integrity Commission, technically vice chair. So this guy, who's like the vote thief in chief, became Donald Trump's national voter chief. Now, what he then sent letters out to all 50 states saying, "Give me your voter rolls," because he wanted to do this cross-check game in every state. He says, "Give me your voter rolls." Well, the state of Terry McAuliffe, of the governor of Virginia, gave a big speech saying, "I'm not going to give this guy this list. He could use it for vote suppression." Well, guess what? McAuliffe is lying in your face because he gave Kobach the damn list in January. Months before, he gave him the whole list. Now, I'm going to tell you one thing. I met Terry McAuliffe. He's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I think he didn't even know that his state had given the list.
Okay.
He didn't even know.
Hey, be nice. My mom's listening in. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so look, we have a minute left. I know that we're going to screen this movie in Hampton Roads, and we're going to screen it in Richmond. What are some other things that people can do to stop Crosscheck? Because this is some devilishment to me.
Well, I would go to gregpalast.com, sign up so you get the continuing reports on my hunt of Crosscheck and the other, vote suppression games. We use the term vote suppression, but we really mean theft. I mean, someone steals your car, you don't say my car's been suppressed, it's been stolen. So your vote gets stolen. So we tell the truth on them. We get together and talk about how we're going to organize against it. We have the NAACP filing lawsuits. We've got the ACLU filing lawsuits. There's going to be legislation in several states, a lot of political action. I think we can get McAuliffe off this. I know Jesse Jackson is telling him, get the heck off Crosscheck, Terry.
Okay.
I think he will. I think that the governor is going to do the right thing. If we give him a little bit of a push, we'll get at least Virginia out of this game. But go to gregpalast.com, sign up. If you can't see the movie in Hampton Roads, you can't catch Richmond Saturday on the September 9th, then please go to gregpalast.com. That's GREGPALAST. Sign up for the free newsletters. And we're going to have a free download of that film starting next week.
Okay, so, great. Well, Greg Palast, I appreciate you joining the Fly Guy podcast. I want to give a salute to my girl Blair Durham from Black Brand. All right. So look, you have 30 seconds. Well, tell us about Black Brand very quickly.
We are a newly minted Black Chamber affiliate. We're affiliate with both the National Black Chamber as well as U.S. Black Chambers, Inc. We're piloting a new concept here that kind of marries your traditional chamber initiatives with a series of community development initiatives as well. So we're building a food system. We're building a community development financial institution to really service those underserved, low and moderate income Black populations.
Got you. And she's talking about Chamber of Commerce. So Greg and Blair, thank you for being on the Fly Guy podcast. I'll talk with you both later. Peace. Stay fly.